I want to talk real quick about the Brooklyn Nets and their slow start to the season. If you've been watching ESPN, you would have think that the sky is falling and they're bound for the lottery. I don't think that's the case. However, they do have some real concerns as far as a title run goes. If you think about this team's kind of last 30 days, it's been the month from hell for them. The whole Kyrie thing. Also, James Harden has got out to a really slow start. I know a lot of people are blaming it on the rule changes, and it's harder for him to get to the line. I think it has more to do with his weight than anything. I was looking at some pictures from him while he was in Houston versus now. He looks like a completely different guy. I mean, he's just, and if you watch the games, he's having trouble getting around people. When I was watching the Miami game in particular, they were doing what they needed to do, getting Duncan Robinson or Max Strus, one of those guys, switched onto Harden. And then looking for him to just create off the dribble and beat them. He couldn't get around them. And if you're not getting around somebody like Duncan Robinson, it's going to be tough for you. I think that's the main culprit for why he's not getting to the line as much this year. Saw a stat on Friday night. He's like 4 free throws down per game from where he was last year, which is insane. And part of it is the rule changes, but if he's not getting around people and he's kind of bulldozing into them and looking for the refs to bail him out, that's just not going to happen this year. He's not, and if he's just not beating guys off the dribble, it's going to be tough for him to get to the line. But I think some of that is overblown. He's going to play his way back into shape. I don't think it was a situation of laziness or outright contempt for the Nets like it was last year with the Rockets, where he just came in kind of intentionally out of shape, looking for them to trade him. I think it had a lot to do with the hamstring, if I had to guess. If you're spending time recovering and kind of rehabbing, that's time that you can't spend getting back into basketball playing shape. So I think over the course of the season he'll kind of play his way back into shape, and I think it'll be fine. All of that being said, he is 32 years old, so we might start to see a little bit of a regression from him. He's not a guy that I consider someone who takes like really great care of his body like LeBron has over the years, or Andre Iguodala, where it just seems like they're always in incredible shape. I've never thought that of Harden, so it could be a more swift father time could come more swiftly for Harden than it has for those guys. This season, I think they'll be fine. I think Harden is kind of the least of their concerns. Obviously, Durant is playing at an MVP level again this year. They've needed more out of Harden to get some wins, but sitting at 3-3 at this stage in the season, it's really not bad for them. They've had some, they play, their losses aren't, they're not losing to Orlando. They lost to Miami, Milwaukee, and the Hornets, who have been really good this year. And their wins are somewhat impressive. I mean, last night they beat the Pacers, which they've only won one game this season, so not that great. But I think one of their other wins was against Philadelphia, who's a pretty good team, and I forget the other one off the top of my head. But so some of the wins and loss stuff for them this season so far is a little bit overblown. I think where you should be concerned is, if you're a Nets fan, is they are getting absolutely murdered on the glass. I've watched 2 of their games this season, the Milwaukee game and the Miami game. Miami was one of the worst rebounding teams in the league last year. They look to be one of the better ones this year. And I'll talk about that in a later video. But relying on LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin primarily as your center core, it's just not getting it done rebounding wise. I mean, Harden and Durant are their leading rebounders, and it's not particularly close for the next guys. Claxton, I like him, but he's just, as far as what they need, I think is they just need like a big, tough, physical center, and they just don't have one on the roster that I can see. At least maybe Day'Ron Sharpe develops into that, but I don't think he's ready to go yet. that could be a real issue for them come playoff time. If Philadelphia ends up getting it together, whether it be Simmons comes back or they get some trade package for him, Embiid is going to eat them alive. Giannis, obviously, the same thing. And without Kyrie this year, or it looks like without Kyrie, that could be trouble. I mean, their points per game are down this year. They're not just outscoring everyone like they did last year, where their defense didn't really matter, at least during the regular season. So, I mean, they could be in real trouble. I think for them, at least, I think the Kyrie thing could end up being a blessing, as much as, losing a guy like Kyrie for the season can be. Maybe the COVID rules changes and he's allowed to play and come back to the team and play in all the games. I don't foresee him getting vaccinated. He's pretty stubborn when it comes to his point of view on things. So I don't see that aspect of it changing, but rules could change and he could come back to the team. If that's not the case, they really have to trade him. I just don't see any way around it. He's got a player option for next year, and it's a really tradable contract at like the mid 30s per year. Like that's really not bad. We're not talking about Russell Westbrook where he's making nearly 50 million, or John Wall where he's making nearly 50 million a year, 35 million, 36 million. That's pretty reasonable. A team could sign on for that for 2 years and not feel too bad about it. The issue with trading him is you've got to trade him to a place that he is going to want to play. So you're going to have to kind of work with him on that, because he's the type of guy that could just say, well, I'm just done with basketball at age 29 and retire. And obviously, trade value wise, you're not going to get a 1-to-1 back for him at this stage. I think you're just going to have to take what you can get. But I think you can fill in some of the holes on this team with that, with the Kyrie trade, if you're not planning on bringing him back anyway, which if, we're to believe the reports out there, they're just not interested in bringing him back or extending his contract at this point. So he could sign on for next year and they'd have him. I doubt he does that with the whole way that this is played out. I'm sure he's probably wanting to skip town. So I think a trade with him is going to be the best case scenario. Unfortunately for them, I think Simmons fits really well with what they need and what they could use, but I don't think Philly will be interested in trading. And I don't think that the Nets would want to trade to an in-division opponent either and have to face Kyrie going forward. A Kyrie Embiid combo could be really, really devastating. So I think they're probably going to want to ship him out west so they don't have to deal with him, at least until the finals, if his team even makes it or if the Nets make it. Looking at the age of this roster, I think this is the last title year run. Unfortunately for them too, with like I kind of mentioned earlier, Harden is 32 years old. Like his contract is at the same stage as Kyrie, where he's got a player option for next year. He's on the Supermax, so it's for a lot more. But if they're wanting to extend him, how many years are you wanting to sign up for James Harden? Because if you sign him up for 5 after the player option, he's going to be 38 years old at the end of that contract. Is he going to be able to play anywhere near this level at age 38? How many more years do we have left where he's, one of the best scorers in NBA history, all-star every year, all-NBA guy? I don't know that there are many left. So I don't know how many years they're going to want to sign up for that. This Nets situation, for as exciting as it was when it got put together, we're realistically looking at a scenario where this team doesn't win a title and this turns into a complete disaster. As far as looking forward to the future. Now, they do have Durant locked up for a long time, but I mean, if Harden decides he wants to leave because they don't offer him, the 4 or 5 year max, I have to imagine they will, just because they don't really have a choice. They have to keep this group together, keep Durant happy, and try and compete for a title here, probably over this year, at the most next year. I don't see them really as a title favorite beyond that. But yeah, I wouldn't, if I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan, I'm not panicking yet. I think 3-3 to start the season really isn't too bad. And I think Harden will get it figured out, at least this season to some degree. Maybe not, MVP level basketball anymore from him, but I don't expect him to be shooting in the 30s for field goal percentage and I just don't see that as a future. I think he can get to 20, 25 a game, and I think that's all they really need from him.